Hey guys, I'm Jason, KM4ACK. I wanted to say thank you for purchasing the EFHW half-wave kit. Let's go ahead and show you how to get the assembly done. It'll only take us a few minutes. Okay, so let's take a look at winding your toroid for your 49-to-1 EFHW half-wave. What we've got here just out of the box is the winder. We've got 3 wire ties. You've got the magnet wire, and you've got the toroid. So I'm going to set the winder and the tie wraps off to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and start unfolding the magnet wire. We need to get this stretched out so that it is just one long straight piece. Okay, and I'm just going to set the toroid just out of the frame for a minute. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out a measuring tape. And I'm going to measure out 8 inches of magnet wire. And once I measure that out, I am just going to fold it right there at the 8-inch mark. That will give us plenty, actually a little bit of extra, for our primary turns. Just kind of straighten that out, get that tape measure out of the way. Now, there's several ways that we can wind this magnet wire. I'm going to do it manually just because it's a bit easier for me, although I am going to turn that around so I can grab the pliers with my left hand and not my right. You can do this with a drill. There's all kinds of different ways that you can go about this, but basically, if you can see that, I'm just grabbing a hold of the wire, and then I've got the loop over here. Take anything you've got. In this case, I'm using a screwdriver. I'm going to stick that through there and then just start twisting this wire. Okay, so there it is. I've got a nice twist on that. Got a little bit of a loop left down here where I had the screwdriver. That's not an issue. We're going to end up cutting that off in a few minutes, so not to worry right now. And as you can see, I've got approximately 5 inches there of twisted wire. So let's go ahead and grab that toroid and start winding the toroid. Now keep in mind, each time the wire passes through the center, it counts as 1 turn. So let's go ahead and slide this up and through. I'm going to slide it to about right there. Leave this end hanging out. So that is 1. I'm going to spin this around, come back through the middle, and that's going to be the number 2 wrap. Now try to keep this as tight as possible each time you wrap around the toroid, but if you do get a little bit of slack in there, it's not a big deal. Now what I want to do is I'm going to kind of check this against my winder. And the purpose for this is where the winder will be attached to these 3 points. I'm sorry, the toroid will be attached to the winder with those 3 points. I want to make sure that I got enough wire left out here to be able to reach my center conductor. So, seeing that I've got plenty of wire here to reach the center conductor, I'm in good shape. Let's go ahead and carry on with winding. Now, if you recall, we've got 2 turns so far on our toroid. Let's go ahead and start passing the long end left through. That's number 3. There's number 4. Okay, so you should be able to see that right now I have 6 turns so far. Now the 7th one is going to pass from this side to the other side. So on our 7th time through the center, let's go through the center, but we're going to pull, well, if I can hang on to the wire today, we're going to go through the center and then we're going to go across the toroid. Get that kink out of the wire. Okay, so now you can see that number 7 passes through the center. Then we're going to start wrapping the opposite direction. So before we were wrapping clockwise, this time we're going to be wrapping counterclockwise. So there's number 7 that passed through the center. That is number 8. Number 9. That will be number 10. Okay, and I've just finished up with the 14th one, and I'm pulling it tight. This wire may come a little loose on me because I'm going to try to let go of things and lay this down so you guys can get a good idea of what that looks like. So your twisted wire is going to go to the ground of your center conductor. This is going to go to the center of your center conductor. And this piece over here, note that it comes out on the bottom side of the toroid. This is going to go to your antenna wire. And we've got quite a bit of extra left out here. We'll trim that up as we need it. Now we can go ahead and mount this to the winder. So I'm going to take the winder and I'm going to kind of position this on the board so that these two pieces of wire come back towards the center conductor. Now we can go ahead and put the tie wraps around the toroid. Okay, so one thing to note here, one side of the winder has a recessed portion in the center connector. I typically mount the toroid to the opposite side of that. So that's something, it really doesn't matter one way or the other, just something that I prefer to do. Okay, so let's set this to the side for a minute. And let's look at some hardware we're going to need for this next portion. You're going to need the screw, a couple of washers, a wing nut, a capacitor, and a center conductor, or a center connector rather. Now, in this case, I'm using a BNC connector, but you can also use an SO239. If you decide to use an SO239, what you're going to have to do is on the winder itself, you're going to have to cut out these spokes. You can just use a pair of snips for that, and then you may have to clean up those edges with a rat tail file. If you're using the BNC connector, it will slide right in without any modifications. So let's go ahead and clear some of that out of the way, and let's take our BNC connector and go ahead and get it mounted on the board. Now that you've got the BNC mounted, I like to take this little tab and bend it up away from the winder itself. That way, as we start to solder this together, there's less chance of melting the winder. Now, what I'm going to kind of do is I'm going to take a look at this wire length. You'll notice we've got way too much here, so I'm going to trim this back. Remember, the twisted side of the wire is going to go to this tab here, and the single wire is going to go to the center conductor here. Right here, we're going to be mounting our hardware, so we need to move this wire around so that it will connect to the hardware. We're going to put a ring lug on this, or a ring terminal, so we need to go ahead and trim this wire back as well. Now that we've got our wire trimmed to the correct length, let's go ahead and we need to remove the finish off of this magnet wire. Now there's several different ways to do this. I've seen people use Dremel tools to do it. I've seen guys try to burn this finish off. What I found is the simplest and the easiest is a little bit of sandpaper. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start cleaning off each of these 3 pieces of wire so we can get that finish off the magnet wire. Now I'm going to take the capacitor and I'm just going to trim back roughly half of the legs. I just don't need this much wire on that capacitor. Once you get the finish cleaned off of the magnet wire, let's go ahead and solder these 3 pieces up. On the ring terminal here, I prefer to both crimp and solder. So I went ahead and got that crimped. Let's get that soldered up. Okay, now that the soldering is finished, let's start off with the screw and a washer. Let's pick up the ring terminal right here, and we'll put all of that through this hole. Now I want to orientate this so it doesn't interfere with this slot here. This slot's going to be used for our elastic strap that retains our wire once we get everything completed. So just route that over a little bit, flip it over. Let's grab another washer and then the nut. And let's go ahead and tighten that down. Now that everything is secured to the winder, let's go ahead and perform a continuity check and just make sure that everything's got a good connection. So I'm going to start by going from the center to the outer of the center conductor. We're good. And then I'm going to check all the way out to the antenna point next. We're good. One more check. If you want to go from the outer conductor to the antenna, we should also have good continuity. Now, the way I prefer to finish this off is with hot glue. It'll help protect everything here. We'll also go ahead and put a little bit of hot glue on all 3 of the wires to keep them in place. Okay, and as you can see, I've got the hot glue over all 3 of the wires, and then you can kind of get an idea of how I built that up so that it's covering the connector completely. Last thing to do is just go ahead and attach that wing nut right to the other side of that screw. And we'll leave it right like that for now. Okay, now that we've got the toroid wrapped and everything soldered up, the hot glue done, all the hardware assembled, the last thing we need to do before attaching wire is go ahead and get our elastic band on the winder. So the first thing we want to do is just tie a quick knot in the end of this. I'm just going to use a simple overhand knot. Kind of keep it out there as close to the end as you can. And then let's go ahead and pull that tight. Just going to use a pair of pliers to do that with. Next up, let's trim off that little bit of excess there. And let's use a lighter or a torch or something, and we'll just go ahead and melt that end down real quick. All right, after we've got that done, you'll notice on the end opposite our toroid, we've got 2 holes. Let's use the one closest to the center to run the elastic through. And what that's going to do is that's going to leave you another point here that we can use paracord with in order to stake down the winder if we need it in the future. On the other end, let's repeat the process with another overhand knot. Now we can just simply take this, wrap it around, and pull it through the slot right here. And as we put our wire on here, we'll undo this, and that'll be the keeper that keeps our wire in place. Now that we've got the winder fully assembled, let's go ahead and attach the wire to the winder. So I'll start by just removing the wing nut. Going to take the wire, just undo the twist tie. We'll get rid of that. You should be able to pull off this first section, and then I'm just going to drop the rest of the wire in the floor right behind me. It's wrapped in a figure 8, so it should come off the spool fairly easily. Now, don't forget to remove your elastic cord. We'll just let that go and stay out of the way. Now, let's start wrapping the wire. What you want to do to wrap the wire is we're going to wrap in a figure 8. So we're going to cross through the center with each pass of the wire. This keeps the wire from getting tangled up and makes it super easy to feed off of the winder. Once the wire is completely wrapped around the winder, let's go ahead and just use the elastic to secure that wire in place. Now we can take the pigtail that's left and go ahead and tie the insulator to the end of the wire. Once you've tied the insulator to the end of the wire, if you prefer, you can come back and put some heat shrink on this as well to kind of help hold that loose end together. All right, guys, I hope you get a lot of use and a lot of enjoyment out of your end-fed half wave. Until next time, 7-3.